you have all joined our inclusive recruitment strategies, expanding your talent pool for lasting success. Before I get sort of started, I'd like to say thank you to people on behalf of the social enterprise of Rocking Your Teams. Your donation will go towards increasing resilience, inspiring, and raising aspirations for teens. Anyone who wants to find out about Rocking Your Teens, please go to www.rockingyourteens.com. And Tanya will also be putting the link into the chat box as well. So please send your donations and explore this website. I'm Nita Sharma, and I am an executive coach, a supervisor, and a consultant who has spent probably about 25 to 30 years working for large and small organizations, designing, delivering, and implementing DEI strategy. Including in that, for me, is one of the areas that I think is very important, which is around inclusion and having being transparent in terms of equitable talent practices that contributes towards diverse workforce. I'm delighted today to be hosting this webinar and introducing you to our three lovely colleagues who've got enormous amount of wisdom that they will be bringing to how you can expand your talent pool for success. Before I sort of hand over to them, I'd like to sort of put a little bit of context in. As we all know, that the modern workplace today employs people of diverse background, experiences, perspectives. Yet, despite the progress of having this diversity in our organizations, in many organizations, there is still a struggle to create a truly inclusive environment and culture for many organizations where an individual can feel truly valued and empowered to be working there, to be able to have their voice heard, to be able to contribute, to make mistakes and not be told off. Now, according to a survey which was done by wearewildgoose.com, there are several issues that emerge in respect to inclusion, or why organizations don't create inclusive environment. The first one, which I'm sure won't be a surprise to you, is classism, which is one of the biggest areas that is prevalent and a barrier for creating diverse organizations and diverse workplaces in the UK. Secondly, a third of the UK companies need to improve on their levels of socio-economic diversity and inclusion. Thirdly, 1 in 5 employees don't think their current employers have an inclusive place to work, although this has improved since the last survey was done a few years back. Fourthly, 57% of employees had witnessed discrimination or a lack of diversity while at work. I think the statistics are pretty stark, and we as practitioners and individuals who work in organizations really need to change the dial in 2024 around that. So what are we going to be looking at today in this webinar? We're going to be looking at what are some of the hidden biases in current recruitment practices. Secondly, we're going to learn to write inclusive job description and attract a wide range of candidates. How do we do that? You know, where's our pool of recruiting? Do we just go to the red brick buildings, universities, or do we go other places? Thirdly, hopefully you'll walk away with discovering practical strategies to expand your talent pool and reach underserved groups. which are enormous in many organizations from my 25 years of or so experience. As I said earlier on, I'm going to be joined by very experienced executive coaches, Ishreen, Sadia, and Joseph, who are all listed in the Diverse Coaching Directory, a directory which connects corporate organizations with coaches from global majority and ethnically diverse backgrounds. And we will discuss inclusive recruiting strategies. Tanya will put the directory's link so that if you wanted to go and look at people, uh, especially our three lovely people here, you can do so, or you can also go on LinkedIn. The format of this session is going to be each person is going to be asked a question after they've introduced themselves, and then we'll be asking you to post some questions which may emerge for you during the course of our webinar today. So I'm going to ask Ishreen to kick off first.
Thank you,
Introduce
Nita.
yourself.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm Ishreen Bradley. I'm the Chief Inspiration Officer and founder of Belonging Pioneers, where we help leaders to realize their ambitions for an organization that thrives on equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And first of all, I want to apologize. You're hearing me from my car. I got stuck in traffic, and I just wanted to be here with you all to share some of our expertise and indeed be here with Sadia and Joseph, who are really great trusted colleagues. So here's what I do. I bring a holistic approach through my career experience and my executive level work in multinational organizations, my MBA, my coaching and engineering qualifications, and my life experience of being an Asian female, Muslim, divorced, single mother to bear on building equitable, inclusive environments in which everybody has an experience that they can belong. And I'm really passionate about everybody having a fair crack at work. And we've won, thank God, we've won multiple awards for that kind of work and our contribution to capacity building underrepresented groups.
Thank you,
I'm really happy to
Ishreen.
be here with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joseph,
Sure.
if you'd like to go next. Can't hear you, Joseph.
Bear with me. Hello, I'm Joseph Owona, and I'm very pleased to be here with you. I'm an executive and leadership coach, helping leaders and aspiring leaders to extend their minds. Now, extend their minds, but also take action, implement what it is that they've extended their minds to so that things will change. Because when we carry thoughts in our minds, nothing changes. It's when we take action that something in the real world changes. I treasure wisdom and I seek wisdom wherever I find it, which is part of the reason I'm here with Sadia, Ishrin, and Nita. And at the present time, I'm supporting our local authority education department in Wales with drawing up and implementing an anti-racism action plan. And part of that is recruiting teachers from Black, Asian, minority ethnic origins into the workforce, especially in areas where they don't have much presence in much of a community, but to get some people in there that give a different flavor of what the real world is like. So I'm very pleased to be here. And most of my work, I go back to possibility. If something is possible, is there a reason not to have a go at it? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Sadia.
Hi, lovely to be here. Completely agree with Joseph. What a start. I'm Sadia Salam. I'm an executive coach, an inclusion facilitator, and still a recovering lawyer. So I started life as a lawyer 25 years ago now. and did that for over 20 years and absolutely loved it. And that really helped me graduate into the work that I'm doing now. And I very much support women, senior women, and especially senior women of colour who have got to the top or are ready to get to the top of wherever they might be, and lead in a different way, lead in a way that works for them and their organisation, a sustainable way. I often find that senior women want to do more than their day job. They want to be change makers. They want to do something in addition to their day jobs. But how do you find the time to do that? And I love supporting them to do that. And recruiting comes up a lot. It comes up because it could be the making of someone's career. If you get recruiting right and you get the right person, they can fly in an organization. But if you get it wrong, it knocks the organization, but it really knocks that talent and can put them back many years. And it's a real shame when we actually have the tools and resources to get this right. So I'm really passionate about what we're talking about today. And it's lovely to be here. Thank you, Nita. I may have stunned Nita into silence, or she might have just frozen for a moment.
It
Who knows?
looks like the screen's frozen.
I think it has. Nita,
Shall we
you
get-
come.
Shall
Yeah,
we get on to the first topic that she mentioned?
yeah. The
I
first
think
question.
it was, I've got
Do you
it
want me to-
here. It's many organizations unintentionally perpetuate biases in their recruiting process. And Nita was really asking us, based on our experience of coaching leaders, what are some of the most common blind spots that companies have when it comes to attracting and evaluating diverse talent, and how can those biases be identified and addressed to create a fairer playing field for all candidates? So I don't know if one of you would like to kick off that conversation.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you, Ashreen. So on blind spots, when I talk to organizations and leaders about recruiting, I often hear them looking backwards. They often tell me about who was a great hire, what worked before, what was really great, and how they think they're really great at recruiting because they've hired some great people in the past. And that's very much their starting point. In addition to that, now we've got to recruit diverse talent, do something differently. Recruiting's become hard, it's become difficult, and it's all about getting the perfect hire. So the starting point's really quite restrictive, looking backwards, and we are being quite restricted in what we can do. There's some fear there. Will I get this right? Will I get it wrong? What can I do differently? I don't know. I know what I've done in the past. I know what's worked, but I don't know in this kind of diverse talent, different way, what to do next. I don't know what to do. And I always think, yes, those are blind spots. But actually, for the fairer playing field that you mentioned, how do we create that fairer playing field? I would actually go there. I would acknowledge where you are, acknowledge what you're attached to. Are you attached to certain universities, certain hires that you've hired in the past that have worked really well? What are you attached to? Just acknowledge it. And then from there, focus on what does fairer playing field look like? What does different look like? What could we get from different? What could that be? And be really open to something different, doing something different in the process. And if you can't think of what that might look like, be that anonymous applications, be that reviewing the criteria, be that using different recruitment agents, get support to help you, because nobody's hiring on their own. We shouldn't be hiring on our own, because then that's definitely got bias. We need a group of people to help us. So try something different, but do it from the start. Be inclusive from the beginning in your attraction of the talent. So I'd say get some support and think of a different way of doing it, and know your starting point.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
There's some really nuggets in there in terms of not hiring on your own. It's a collective process. I really like that. Ishreen, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'd love to. So absolutely what Sadia said is a huge blind spot. But also there's another blind spot, which is people think there aren't enough diverse talent out there, People think, oh, especially the more senior hires, people think, oh, well, they just don't exist. Well, they do, and they're really good. Okay, so yeah, so when you start from that low possibility mindset, Joseph mentioned possibility, right? When you start from that low possibility mindset, that actually limits what's actually possible and the actions that are available to you. So it's kind of like putting these blinkers on, and you can't really see everyone who's out there, and you're missing out. Um, and it limits what actions you can take. So um, it's very easy to identify because people just come up with that, and then the part of the problem is they're trying to continue doing their traditional methods of recruitment. And my approach, the solution, the kind of way to address that when I work with clients is to look at their mindsets, like Sadia said, just really help them to think about what they see as possible, what their potential prejudices, we call them biases now, what those might be, and help to really get clear on what they are committed to in terms of the recruitment. Because if they're not committed to recruiting someone from a diverse background, there's really no point in hiring that person because they won't come into a culture in which they can be effective. And so it's not just the um, individual culture that we look at. We look at the team culture and the organization culture as well. Because you really want people to be able to come in and stay, otherwise you're wasting a lot of money. And I've got an example of this, and this was at executive levels and at board. And with the board situation, um, the client had 8 trustees. They wanted to increase by another 4, and they wanted those 4 to be people of color. Now, their whole presumption was, oh, there aren't, we're never going to find 4 people of color who will be trustees. They're so scarce. And so we worked with them. We worked with them on their individual mindsets and some interesting uncoverings around racism, which we helped them to overcome. In fact, some of the trustees who were covertly racist did end up leaving. In terms of the interview process, we managed to have 16 people of color apply, and they were so good that they didn't just take the 4 that they wanted, they recruited 8 new people of color trustees who are making a massive difference to that organization right now.
Great, fantastic. And I would say that's a wonderful example of how you need to be changing mindset. And similarly, I remember being involved in recruiting trustees, and you do have to change the mindset. There is another story attached to that. That nearly 30 years ago, I remember recruiting for trainee producers in the BBC, and we were told there isn't the talent out there. And I will tell you, in 1992, we had over 500 applicants of producer trainees out there from diverse community, from ethnically diverse community, who applied for those roles. They were going, oh wow, we did not exist. So mindset is very important. Joseph, you're mute, Joseph.
I think I'm going to leave my mic on. So there's this quote from Ryan Holiday, author of Right Thing Right Now, which goes, when you surround yourself with people who think like you and talk like you and tell you what you want to be true, you fail to develop a strong immune system that can deal with disagreement, tension, and challenges. And I bring that up because when we recruit, when we um, recruit people, go into the recruitment process. So let's say we attract more people from a diverse background, be it um, age, be it race, be it gender. What we hear, we often hear in the light of what's already in our minds. So the same response from 2 different people would be heard differently. As Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow says, it's easier for us to make generalizations and have a shortcut through than stress our bodies thinking hard. So when we surround ourselves with people who are like us, who think like us, then that's our comfort zone. When somebody who says something different or looks different expresses something, then it is heard in the light of actually no, this doesn't quite fit. Actually, it might be exactly what the leader wants to hear, what the organization wants to hear at that time. And my suggestion for tackling this is consider, and this is something I've advised people to do before a recruitment exercise. Sit down together as a panel and describe the person you are trying to recruit. As you're listening to other people speak, if you find out there are people who are being excluded from that description, you may need to ask yourself questions about how open are our minds to somebody different. If, for example, you're talking about this and everyone you're describing is a man, then does that mean that your minds are closed to women and a woman has to work harder to get heard in that space? The other one I wonder if HR departments would do is to do a post-mortem about 8 months after a job is recruited into, because they say 8 months is the time when people stop pretending in the job. They become their real selves. So 8 months after, do a post-mortem and say, how is this going? Did we get who we wanted to get?
Yeah.
And in that case, that'll tell you whether your recruitment process is actually holding up to what you wanted to.
Thank you. And actually, what that creates for me is a bit of learning I had a few years ago when I was running an inclusive leader workshop, and this leader said, in respect to recruitment, and he said it to his team, it's not what you're doing, it's what you're not doing around recruitment that I want you to focus on. And I thought, wow, this is really powerful. Before we kind of move on to the next section, next question, um, there are sort of another sort of poll we did recently, which is what are inclusive recruitment challenges? And I'm sure for many of you won't be a surprise that lack of diversity came up as 35%. Bias in the hiring process was 46%. Disability accessibility poor was 4%, and other was about 15%. So bias in the hiring process is still prominent. What can we do in order to minimize that? So the second question that I think we'll be building on the first question that we've been responding to. Job descriptions are often at first point of contact for potential candidates. How can organization go beyond simply listing qualifications and write job descriptions that are genuinely inclusive, appealing to a broad range of background and experiences? I.e., you must be from Oxbridge. Are the words specific? Are the phrases, the format, the language that we're using to do the job posting, is that welcoming and equitable, as Ishreen was talking earlier on? So, Joseph, if you'd like to start first.
Yeah, I'd like to kick off with a couple of questions for HR, which is what practice would ensure in your organization that you would be recruiting the very best person? What new do you need to do? And most HR people, I think, have an idea. Again, was there a job description for this role? in the past? Is it being written now? If it's being written now, who wrote that job description? If it existed, just like you were saying earlier on, Ishrin was saying earlier on. No, I think it was Sadia who was saying earlier on. Who was where did that job description come from? Who was it modeled on? If it's looking in the past, are you describing what used to work rather than what will work now and what will work in the future? So that job description is really important. How clearly and accurately does it describe what you want? Because it is it is the job description that informs the person specification that people then match themselves to. And a term like a good team player, what does that mean to different people, to someone who's looking outside? Are you describing somebody who relates well with people, is attracted to working with people rather than would work alone, is willing to cooperate and invest time and efforts with colleagues, collaborating when it's needed to? That breaks down what a team player is for me. An organization might have different words based on its own values. So what is it you really want? If we are asking for a qualification, for example, in politics, are you asking for a politics qualification, or are you asking for the kind of thinking that a degree in politics would give you? In which case, describe what that thinking is and where it'll fit in. So if it's a research-minded person who has experience of research, say that. And you might get different people. So maybe somebody who hasn't studied politics coming into that job because they know how they think in a way that would work for the organization.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I want to encourage people from the audience, if they have any questions, please post them and we'll be happy to answer them. We've got some space at the end of it. And could I ask the wonderful coaches to take 2 minutes each, because otherwise we're going to run away with time here. So, Sadia.
Thank you. So what can organisations do to go beyond their usual job listing? One thing is, don't forget the diverse talent that you already have. What is it that they love about your organisation? There's some real gold that you can include. You don't have to say, I have diverse talent and this is what they said, or you could say that. Really use what the diverse talent are loving about the organisation. So start there. And then I'd also think about, what is the information that diverse talent would like to see in a job advert? And the things that I hear come up all the time are, what is the current diverse talent saying about the organisation? What are they enjoying? How do they allocate work? How do they promote? Do they help with getting mentors and sponsors? Diverse talent knows that when they join organisations, they are still going to need help with their career once they are there. Mm. And they're really aware of that. They want to know that information. And if you've got really good programs about that, talk about it. And then finally, talk about the experience of the role. Talk about the outcome for the client and the end user of whatever that role is creating, because that brings it alive. Yes, you have the criteria for what you need for people, but bring it more alive so that you give diverse talent the ability to grab hold of the experience and bring themselves rather than tick boxing. And also, if you have feedback from clients that say they really love this team, really love the role, talk about that too. I think there's a lot of information you have within your organization from your clients, from the great feedback that you have, that you shouldn't be hiding. That's the information that should be in these job specs.
Great, thank you. So there's some really great wisdom in Ishrin.
Sure, Nita, thank you. Traditionally, I believe that job descriptions have been exclusion documents rather than inclusion documents. They've been designed to make the recruiting job as easy as possible by having the minimum number of applicants. So they've been like what I call a jump through the hoops to qualify kind of document. And if you want to recruit diverse talent, I'd say that's an area really to focus on, to make it a sales document, a sales brochure for the opportunity to work in your organization rather than something to qualify out people. For example, I bet your organization wouldn't use the traditional job description format to promote one of your products or services to your prospective clients. So I'm inviting you to take that mindset of actually you've got to have a value proposition for people to engage with, especially diverse talent. And in that document, you want to include your diversity statement. You've got to include things about flexible working arrangements and accommodations that you're ready to make. And you want to really communicate the culture of your organization. Who are your leaders? What do they do to encourage an inclusive culture where everybody experiences they can belong? You want to explain the purpose, the values and behaviors that are encouraged in your organization. We value diverse perspectives, we foster an inclusive environment. And you want to showcase, like Sadia said, showcase the diversity of your organization and include some case studies from diverse talent who already work for you. So I'd say
Yeah.
that's my main contribution to that question.
There's some really lot of sort of gems in all the answers you've given, from Joseph's cookie cutters to Sadia's having information around diverse propositions, value proposition for Ishreen. There's so many and I love that word, sort of not recruiting for exclusion, but recruiting for inclusion. So really, really lovely, lots of gems in there. Moving on to our third question, which is around expanding the talent pool and reaching underrepresented groups. Getting my teeth around those requires a proactive approach. We've been touching on that a little bit. What innovative strategies have you seen or implemented to expand the talent pool beyond the traditional channels? How can companies leverage partnerships, technology, and targeted outreach connections with qualified candidates who might not be actively seeking for opportunities? Sadia.
It's a great question. And I think whether you're recruiting internally, doing it all in-house, or you're using external recruitment agents, I'd really look who is doing the recruiting. Who is the group of people that are deciding on who to interview, where to go out to get candidates? Make sure if it's external recruiters, ask them how many diverse candidates have they placed in the last 2 years. Really important questions. And there's no shame involved. If it's none, okay. Well, what are you doing about that? You really make sure you're using the right people to recruit for you. Because the best cases that I've seen is where whoever's recruiting, internally or externally, is do a diverse talent mapping exercise. So they really do map out where this talent is. If you don't know where the talent is hanging out, then you're never going to be able to attract them. You're just not. So you need to know where they are hanging out and what they need. And you can get that from doing a diverse talent mapping. And if your recruitment agents don't do that exercise, ask them why. And ask them how on earth do they know where to get this talent from. And if you hear there's just not enough talent out there, they are the wrong recruitment agents. They really are. So you would not waste your money there. So use the right recruiters. So that's a really important one. But it's really important to find out where that talent hangs out and to speak to them in the places where they hang out, because it is different. And I think it's just as Ishreen was saying earlier, inclusion starts at the beginning. Inclusion attraction, inclusion asking of questions, inclusion decision-making as to the candidate, and then inclusion onboarding. There's lots of different steps, and you have to think about inclusion at each and every step.
So I guess what you're saying is there's a lot of educational piece in there for both internally for the organization, but also for the agencies that you're working with and educating them. And I love your idea of, getting them to say, how many diverse people have you put forward or have you got on your books? Really great question. Ishreen.
Yeah, I think it's really important to build partnerships. I think when it comes to recruitment agencies, they tend not to be as committed to diverse talent because they have to work that little bit harder. So if you can help them, or if you recruit directly, look at your local educational establishments. I was working with a client in Aldgate, a creative client, and they were looking to recruit more diverse talent. And obviously, they're well located, right? So they built bridges with the University of East London, but not just kind of at a generic level, not just at a careers fair level, or not just with the careers office, but actually going to the relevant departments, building links with those relevant departments, and having events that invited students from those departments to find out about their work, and really and also sponsoring, so offering a scholarship um, to potential students in that department already builds awareness of your organization. Remember the value proposition. It's like, hey, this is a company that really cares about us and is committed to us. So scholarships are usually a good way with the academic institutions, if that's something you can afford, but also tying with the professional organizations. So I do a lot of work with the WISE campaign, Women in Science and Engineering, and the Institute of Engineering and Technology. And they have access to students, they have access to people who are really committed to their field, that are probably more focused than, in fact, with those organizations, it goes right across, right? It's not just at the entry level, even at the very senior level, those organizations have access. So working with them to get some recommendations. And then my final point is around technology, actually. Which is, if you're using technology, especially this machine learning and generative AI, just be really careful, because you may have heard of the story with Amazon a few years ago. I think it was 2017, where they were using generative AI for recruitment. And it was like rejecting women for just, if they found the word women in the application, that person would get rejected because it was based on machine learning. And most of the people who worked at Amazon in the past and were successful were men. So you just want to be really careful about what technology you're using to make sure that it is equitable as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not to over rely on technology. Joseph.
Yes, that's a really, really good insights there. Thank you. So one, the innovative way I've found, which recognizes that many jobs that are filled are never advertised. It's relationships that cause people to get to know organizations and jobs appear. That's the reality. Now, building relationships with organizations, going into places that people naturally congregate, is a good way. And Sean and Samil of No Boundaries Consulting, they're looking to increase, or find ways to increase recruitment from local communities. And they took a presentation into a mosque to go and speak with people, to tell them about, and therefore build confidence, that actually this is a good place, that you're a good career, that your children and you might consider doing. So building that awareness, because many times we assume that everybody, if we put an advert, everybody will come. But not everybody sees themselves as able to approach. And so there is some extra effort is required. And going to the place where people congregate naturally and speaking to them there could open a door that one hadn't seen before. So it's not technology, it's people.
I guess, if I sort of summarize what, you three have been saying, what comes to my mind is two things, or maybe three things. Is one of them is that we have to do a multiple level intervention, not just one or this. The second one, which I think, I was very aware of 30 years ago, and we're still talking about it this year. This year is we just can't do one-offs. We just can't put. In the old days, it was put an ad in the Voice if you were around then, if you were old as I am, and that would be you got to educate. You got to do it several times. So even going into the mosque is a fantastic idea, and you just can't do it once. You've got to do it multiple level, because people have perceptions about brands, and they feel, okay, this organization is open, or no, this. Nowadays, I think there was some research done recently that graduates often now look for organizations which have a very active diversity and inclusive policy. So they're no longer, just going to join Shell because Shell is, a big multinational corporation and so forth. They're looking for things within that. Now, I want to kind of open it up to the audiences. And Tanya, I wonder if there are any questions that are burning and emerging that people would like to. I know questions from the audience, so let's kind of move on to the next question, and hopefully it would generate some more thinking. So the last question that I'd like to ask the three of you is measuring the impact of inclusive recruitment. So beyond the moral imperative, let's leave that behind. Inclusive recruitment has a direct impact on business outcomes. I mean, for the last 20 years, business outcome has been often talked about, but I wonder how much it's moved the dial. How can organization measure the success of their diversity and inclusion efforts in the hiring process? What key metrics or indicators should be tracked to demonstrate the value and the ROI of a more inclusive workforce? Ishreen, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, as you implied, Nita, it's so important to map your DEI hiring measures to the business outcomes. So it might be with the easiest one, which is a cost-based measure, which is the cost of recruitment, right? So what does it cost to recruit, and how long do they stay? Because if they come in, stay for 3 months and leave because the culture isn't right, then you've just wasted a whole lot of money. And you can use that to leverage your DEI programs with your key stakeholders. Another really useful metric and data point, I think, are exit interviews. So they usually measure whether the culture is right. And I like what you said, Joseph, about after 8 months, then we feel that we can be honest here, right? So that's another point at which to measure it. And I find this is a really useful measure. I do work with the insurance sector, and that's a sector that's 93% white. Um, and what they find is there's a 30% churn rate of people of color recruits at the entry level, which is a massive cost to the bottom line, right? And then I think Glassdoor is quite a good measure as well. And I think what's really important is to know how effective your measuring process is. You know, that old thing, garbage in, garbage out. So once you've set these clear goals, it's important to track the data and make sure the data is accurate, to make sure you communicate that data and the insights, and to see how you're doing against the rest of your sector.
So, Nita's dropped out. Let me have a go at that question, if I may. And my thoughts go to a phrase my friend used when he and I were speaking, which is enlightened self-interest. What is the enlightened self-interest of this organization in having diverse talent? Because it'll be a tick box exercise if there's no interest, because leaders want to be successful, organizations want to be successful. And so I'm thinking of, don't copy what other people are doing. Figure out your own measures. So what organizational values and culture would benefit from having a diverse set of people living it in your organization? If your values, corporate values, are what drives the behaviors and the culture of the organization, how would they benefit from different people who live them? If they will, then how did you measure the impact of your values? If you measure that and you have a different set of people living it, you will get different results. The second one, very quickly, is what problems, intractable problems that affect your organization would benefit from a diverse, from a different perspective. Because if you have different people in, they'll bring in different perspectives. Measure those results that are already important to you.
Thank you.
Sadia.
I apologize. My internet seems to be doing its own thing today. Sadia, did you you haven't gone?
Not yet. And what I'm
No.
going to use, I'm just going to give an example in the legal profession of what I think is working really, really well. There's two organisations. There's Interlaw Diversity, which have a report called the UK Model Survey, and another company called Piracle. And what I love about what they're doing is that they are taking the data from lots and lots of law firms, and they're taking it about how much diverse talent is hired at all the different levels in a law firm, how many get to partnership, how many get to salary partnership, full equity partnership. So they're getting all this data that's really helpful, but also comparing it against other firms in a healthy way within that profession. So you can see where you are, you can see what's possible because you're seeing other firms doing it, and you can see where you are on DE&I with your hiring, because that's telling you what the market is doing. And you get to see, well, we're not getting enough associates at this level, or we're not getting enough partners at this level. And then you can really drill down to, well, why? And actually, what I'm loving about reports where firms are signing up to, where they know they're being compared with others, is they're collaborating. They're saying, we're really good at this. This is how we do it. We're not so good at this. What are you doing? And there's collaboration going on within the profession. And that's really helping DE&I, because DE&I and hiring and getting hiring right is not just one organization's problem or issue or challenge. It's the whole sector. And your clients are also going through the same. We're all going through the same. So we all need to share more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you highlight for me is the whole area around benchmarking in our industry and learning from it rather than shaming and naming. It's really about benchmarking and looking at our own progress and how do we compare ourselves. What are they doing? Getting curious about it. We have a question from the audience, which is someone's asking, how do organization, I think it's an excellent question actually, how do organization retain the talent after recruiting? Because we've touched on that. It's not just getting somebody through the door. How do you make sure you keep that talent, and you grow them within the organization? So, Ishrin, how would you respond to this?
So I would say the first thing is give them an induction where they really experience being valued, connect them with people like them, connect them with people not like them, educate their managers, your team leaders or more senior, educate them in how to welcome people into the organization, how to ensure that they are provided with what they need to contribute of their best, because those first 100 days are really important for somebody to settle in and have an experience of belonging. So really listen to them, really understand what their needs are, and provide reasonable accommodations as much as possible. If it's a parent who needs to take time off and have flexible working, make that easy for them, and educate the whole organization to have that culture of inclusion so that people feel that they belong in that organization. They're known, they're valued, and they're respected.
I agree. And just adding to that, Ishreen, I'd also say I'm a really big fan of stay interviews, and I see lots of organizations doing it. In the calendar, very clear, stay interview with your manager, talking about what's going to keep you there. Let's be really frank about it. What's working, what's not working, and have that conversation. And if you haven't got the relationship to talk about that, then that's where you start. You need to build a relationship with that person first so that you can have those frank conversations about what you need to stay there, because it's pretty, I can guarantee that whatever you need to stay there, other people will benefit from as well, because it's about creating, the key to retaining diverse talent is an inclusive culture. And when there's an inclusive culture, you keep everyone. It's not just a diverse talent. So it's a winning for all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if Joseph, you've got anything on that. I know
Yeah,
Nita's got.
just to add that it's back to that first point about generalizations and how we treat people as a group. If you are recruiting diverse talent and you expect everything to remain as it is, how you communicate, your induction, and everything, then you are doing it for the majority of people who are already there. You're not tailoring it and seeing the individual. And there's something about people being seen as individuals that says, I'm welcome. If I say welcome to everyone, it sounds very different from if I say welcome to Nita, because she knows I'm speaking with her. So in the same way, having that conversation with an individual to find out what is it they need to remain in the organization, and not just remain, but be successful. Because if they really are successful, if they can surprise you in how successful they are, chances are you'll start looking for somebody who's like them. I've had somebody make a comment like that, to say, I've had so and so person. I want more. Where can I find more of so and so person? And yeah, that's what my contribution would be.
Thank you, Sadia. And again, apologies for my internet. Never does that before. Anyway.
It's all right. So I think we've all answered this one. Thank you, Nita.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I think there is a sort of a couple of things that maybe we can touch on in as we bring this to an end. What would be um, perhaps a couple of your top tips as people walk away from this conversation that we're having today? What would be, you think, if you go and do this too, it will move the dial? What do you think that might be individually for each one of you?
Great question. For me, it's two things, and I think we've mentioned this a few times. It's start with yourself. What is your mindset? Where are you starting from on this? No shaming, no blaming, but where are you? Are you excited about inclusive recruiting, or are you scared about it? Where are you on it? And start there and be committed to inclusive recruiting. And then my second one is, who are you using to do this? Because you could be an expert in your field as a leader, but recruiting is an expertise in itself. Who are you using to do that?
Great, lovely.
Yes.
Ishreen.
Yeah, I can build on that, Sadia. It's your mindset and then your team's mindset. and your organization's mindset, right? So you need to really look at the culture and make sure that especially your team, but ideally your whole organization, has that inclusive mindset. I think that's one top tip. The other is definitely start to look at your job descriptions as opportunities for communicating your value proposition and your brand so that you attract a wider audience. I think those are the two top takeaways I'd like to
Yeah.
give you.
Joseph.
Yeah, I would go. I would agree with that. The mind, and in the sense that this is change. If you are looking to become more diverse, this is change. And as the novelist Mark Twain said, the only person who likes change is a wet baby. Leaders, other people, they don't like change. Therefore, approach it that it will be, because it's change. You can't take it for granted. You have to work on the people. People will have to work in their minds in order to be ready for what is coming.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd love to know where you get all your quotes from, Joseph, because you have enormous amounts of them. What I want to do is I just want to quickly wrap up on some of the salient points that all of you have touched on. There have been so many, and hopefully people are walking away with, "Oh, I could be doing this." I think what we're looking at right at the outset, that when we're looking at inclusive recruitment, starting off with, the job description, even beyond that, what does the job need, and then funneling down to the person specification and really challenging yourself that you're not looking for a cookie cutter of a person to replace that role. Because often people say, oh, that worked last time. We just want the same person to join it because it's easier. And that sort of leads me into the mindset, really inclusive mindset in terms of thinking at that stage about who you're seeking to have. Where are you going? The other thing for me is a really great practice that leaders and managers, whoever's recruiting, is when you're about to recruit, I always say to them, think about yourself, and to touch on this as a mindset, where might I be having a bias? And that's one thing. The second is to always have a job description in front of you, because research tells us that when we have clarity of what the job we're looking for, our biases, which unconsciously creep in, don't creep in because we're more cognizant of that. And the third one is actually benchmarking ourselves, with other organizations. What are they doing? We don't have to invent the wheel. There are plenty of things that people are doing that are amazing. And yes, this is about change altogether. So I want to thank Sadia, Joseph, and Ishreen about all their wisdom, their inputs, their vast experience that they have added to us. And you can find them in the Diverse Coaching Directory if you want to follow up them, as well as LinkedIn. I just want to kind of also flag up the next event, which is taking place on the 25th of July. And that is about leading with empathy, developing inclusive leadership skills for exceptional results. Do subscribe to this, because it's going to be one which I think fits in beautifully with this talent recruitment around psychological safety. How do you, it's not about getting people in, but how do you create a culture, an environment where people feel psychologically safe to be themselves, to challenge, to make mistakes, and be embraced at the same time. So that would be, you can sign up for that, which is great. And lastly, your feedback, which we would love to hear from you. And we'll send you a link in the chat. And we'd love to hear what we could do well, what could we do better. And of course, we want to hear that we've been absolutely fantastic and giving you lots of gems to think about, really. So lastly, a huge thank to Joseph, Ishreen, and Sadia for attending this webinar, and I apologize for my internet connectivity, and I'm sure you got everything that you wanted to. So thank you very much to everyone who attended and to the wonderful panel that's here.
Thank you, Nita.
Thank you, Nita. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.